Breaking news tonight that a U.S. soldier missing in Iraq since 2004 has been found. More specifically, more awfully, his remains have been identified. The father of Sergeant Matt Maupin telling the Associated Press tonight he has received that word from the U.S. military. This just 1 week shy of 4 years since Sergeant Maupin was captured. The capture video taped, a subsequent video purporting to be his execution, never verified. 4 years later, John McCain and President Bush have been touting the success of their surge in Iraq this past week. But if you didn't hear them, it may have been they had been drowned out by this week's mortar fire. Our third story on the countdown tonight, it's so bad U.S. officials in the green zone today used a phrase likely to starch the shorts of anybody who remembers the Cold War. Duck and cover. After Senator McCain's trip to Iraq last week, he called the escalation a success. The same day, the Iraqi government launched an assault in Basra against militias loyal to Muqtada al-Sadr, demolishing last year's ceasefire, triggering new militia fighting in, sometimes militia seizing of towns including Nasiriyah, Kut, Hilla, Amara, Karbala, Diwania, Shatra, Suwaira, Beji, Bakuba, and others, Baghdad among them. Today, al-Sadr called a ceasefire, demanding the government release Sadrists who have not been charged and stop its raids on al-Sadr's political allies. But al-Sadr is also refusing to disarm. Thus, it is unclear how long this ceasefire of the fighting that ended the previous ceasefire will itself last. McCain and Mr. Bush praised the government assault as evidence of Iraq's ability to shoulder its own military burdens. Mr. Bush Friday, talking U.S. withdrawal.
We are withdrawing troops. It's called return on success. And our intention is to pull down five battalions by July. Troops are coming out. 5 brigades. Excuse me. Troops are coming out because we're successful.
In fact, troops coming out will leave behind a force larger than before Mr. Bush's so-called surge began. And by the time Mr. Bush spoke those very words, Iraq's military proved insufficient, and Americans had entered that combat. Not to mention that some of the Iraqis, 40 Baghdad police officers, defected to the militias yesterday. Joining us tonight, MSNBC political analyst Rachel Maddow, also host of her own program every weeknight on Air America Radio. Thanks for your time tonight, Rachel.
Hi, Keith.
Mr. Bush's criteria for success or of the escalation or the surge, however you want to phrase it, a reduction of violence, political reconciliation in Iraq, the ability to reduce U.S. troop levels to where they were pre-escalation. On which of those criteria are Mr. Bush and Senator McCain basing their claims of success in Iraq?
Well, the reduction of violence did happen in some parts of Iraq for some amount of time. Obviously, from the footage you were just airing and the news we've all seen this week, it is much, much worse in some other places. In terms of political reconciliation, that's hard to claim when some Shiite factions are now literally at war with each other, not in some political metaphor, but they are literally waging war against one another in the south of the country and in parts of Baghdad. And in terms of U.S. troops coming home, in the last few months, we've seen more U.S. troops in Iraq than at any other time since the invasion. And as you mentioned, after the surge is over, we will have more troops there than before Bush announced this dramatic change in strategy after the November 06 Republican election losses. It doesn't look like Petraeus or Bush is going to plan to bring the troop numbers down significantly before Bush is out of office. So if the goalposts keep moving, and if the grounds on which you are going to claim success are never remembered or somehow moved down the field all the time, then success becomes just a political word that doesn't have any absolute meaning at all.
It's not just goalposts. This is about the coin toss. This is the heads I win, tails you lose coin toss.
Yeah.
Because when violence dips, Senator McCain, for one, calls this a sign of progress. When violence flares, he calls it a sign that progress is fragile. But both cases, he says, demonstrate why American troops need to stay there. How does that argument play in November? Is it too simple even to sell to people who want a rationalization to stay in Iraq?
Well, that's the very simple thing that the war proponents, whether it's from the Bush administration now or whether it's from McCain and his advisors for the future, that's the very simple thing that you need to understand about what their arguments have said. This heads I win, tails you lose. Essentially, McCain has argued that if we are not incurring casualties, then U.S. troops can stay forever. But if we are incurring casualties, then U.S. troops can't leave. And what that boils down to is casualties or no, they need to stay forever. I mean, remember when the argument from Bush was, we will stand up Iraqi forces so that American forces can stand down? In 2006, Bush and the Pentagon were saying that they expected Iraqi forces to be completely in control of all of Iraq by sometime in 2007. Then in January 2007, Bush said that would happen by November 2007. Well, of course, now it's March 2008. Iraqi forces aren't even in control of 1/4 of Basra, which is Iraq's second largest city, and the Pentagon in its latest quarterly report has just dropped all mention of when Iraqi forces might be expected to be able to control their own nation. The goalposts just keep moving and keep moving and keep moving.
And perversely, do our elections play into events in Iraq? I mean, Republicans really want political reconciliation in Iraq now if it means that a radical Islamic cleric like al-Sadr might do well in Iraqi elections this October, 1 month before our elections in this November?
Or that Nouri al-Maliki might shore up his political success by allying himself with the Badr Brigade, which is the second largest Shiite militia in Iraq, which has even stronger ties to Iran than the Muqtada al-Sadr's Mahdi army does. I mean, what's going on right now, you have John McCain's surrogates, for example, like Lindsey Graham, his very close associate on the morning shows today, saying it's Iranians killing Americans and trying to turn the crisis in Iraq right now, the security crisis in Iraq right now, into a call essentially for the U.S. to wage war on Iran. It sounds to me like they're trying to push the situation in Iraq right now for their own political gain and toward the next war.
Gosh, who would have thunk that? MSNBC political analyst Rachel Maddow, who has, of course, her own radio show weeknights on Air America. Thank you, Rachel. Good night.
Thanks, Keith.